What's up, everyone? A big week here at Geek Culture. We've been doing camera reviews, lens reviews, a lot of tech reviews, and we are not done yet. 24 hours ago, I received the 2021 16-inch MacBook Pro that is pretty much maxed out. The M1 Max chipset, 10-core CPU, 32-core GPU, 64 gigabytes of unified memory, and 2 terabytes of onboard storage. This is a beast of a machine. I am super pumped to try this out. I'm going to give you guys a full review in the coming weeks because this has to go back. But I want to give you my first impressions because if you're like me and you're out there and you're debating, should I get the MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chipset or the M1 Max chipset, 14-inch, 16-inch, or just stick with my 13-inch MacBook Pro or MacBook Air, what should I do? I'm going to try to answer some of those questions for you in this video. Then, of course, in the full review, I will really push this through its paces. 8K video, 6K video, 4K video, multiple timelines, audio, photos, 100 megapixel medium format images, editing in TIFF, editing in RAW, throwing them in various different apps. We're going to try to burn this machine out if we can. If we can do that. That will be my full review. But for now, we're going to pull it back a little bit and we're just going to talk about this machine for someone who may want to buy it today, tomorrow, or next week. So with that, let's get down to talking about the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Okay, first impressions I want to tell you is that it is a little bit larger than the previous 16-inch MacBook Pro that came out a couple years back, okay? Reason being, I think Apple's learned some lessons along the way. They wanted to go slim and sleek for a lot of years with their Pro machines, but that doesn't really work with Pro machines. Why? Because Pro users need ports, they need power, they need efficiency, they need a machine that is going to be like a desktop replacement that they can take with them if they need to go somewhere, but they don't want to sacrifice. Now, the MacBook Pro 16-inch does that predominantly well. A couple things I'll talk about, which I wish was improved on or they could have done a little bit better, but these are just minor things. But for the most part, this machine is everything a Pro user has wanted from Apple for the past, I would say, 3 to 4 years. In my personal opinion. Let's talk about the ports. This is a big deal for us users out there. We now have 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, which is of course backwards compatible USB-C and Thunderbolt 3, etc., etc., etc. We have an HDMI port, we have a headphone jack, we have an SD card reader as well, and we have MagSafe, which is back in the game. I love MagSafe. It saves you if you knock your cable in an accident from your laptop flying all over the place. You know, previously it was USB-C. Great, it charges fast, but if you knock your laptop on accident, there goes your laptop. Hopefully you got quick hands to catch it. Otherwise, it's a very expensive drop, but MagSafe protects you against that. Now, in terms of the ports, I'm glad we have more ports. However, now that it's thicker, why only 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports? I mean, I'm looking at my iMac M1 version right here. It's got 4 ports. It's got 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 2 USB-C ports. Why couldn't we have that, Apple? Or even 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 2 USB-C ports? Because you need to connect things to this device. It's not just a couple things here and there because yes, we've got the SD card reader, so I don't need my SD card reader anymore. I don't need that dongle. It is gone. But if I need to hook up a couple other drives to this because I need it for work, then I need to hook up my Zoom F6, which I use for audio, then maybe something else, I'm pretty much maxed out again on a Pro machine that is not cheap. Apple, why not more Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports? Why? What holds you back in the engineer room? Who's in there telling us that we cannot have this? I don't know. But anyway, that is my only complaint about the ports on this machine. HDMI is great if you use HDMI. The SD card reader is fantastic. However, I'm testing cameras. We're slowly going to CF Express Type B and Type A, but SD card is still the predominant. That is the main card most people use. So it's there. It's great. I'm happy that it's there because it makes my life a lot easier to transfer images and audio into my machine. In terms of the battery life on this, now they're saying up to 21 hours in terms of video playback. I haven't had that chance to test this out, but I can tell you this sips juice. Unless you're pushing Pro apps, this sips juice. Last night I was on the web, I was watching some video, YouTube and all that great stuff. And I mean, I didn't even plug this thing in since I got it. Put it to sleep, opened up this morning, and I mean, I don't know if there was even a fraction of the bar missing. It was beautiful. It was a thing of beauty. Then I was loading up all my apps today: Photoshop, Capture One, Lightroom, all the others, Luminar AI, Topaz Denoise, sharpening, gigapixels, loading that all up, pushing it a little bit, editing some images, and the battery was still relatively good. So I'm impressed with the battery life on this thing. So if you're worried about battery life on a MacBook Pro, do not be. Apple has also learned their lesson and giving us some decent battery life in a Pro machine. I'm liking where Apple's going with this whole Pro thing. I'm getting it, because previously they were treating the Pro machines like they're consumer machines, and they're not. Now we're getting Pro battery life, Pro form, Pro ports, and we've got to talk about the display. I'll get to the keyboard, I'll get to the speakers, we'll get to all that. We've got to talk about this XDR display and this with ProMotion. It is beautiful. It is stunning. It is what I wanted in a display. As a matter of fact, if I got this machine, and when you're editing at home, 16 inches is a good size display, but I like a big display. I like 24, 27, even 32 inches and larger, because when you're editing video and editing photos, you want to zoom in and see the details, and you can do that beautifully on this display. But you know what would make me sad? It's if I had to plug this into an external display, because no external display except Apple's own would be as beautiful as this, and I would be sad, because it is absolutely stunning to use. It really is. I mean, the colors are fantastic. The ProMotion, just like your iPad Pro, it's just it's a thing of beauty. I absolutely love it. Talking about the display, we got to talk about the notch. People complain about the notch. Honestly, folks, the notch is not a big deal, and I'll tell you why in just a bit, because I'm going to give you a sample of what it's like to record footage out of the camera on this, which is now 1080p. That's right. Gone are the days of those really low resolution webcams we've had in previous MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs. It is gone. As a matter of fact, I'm going to roll some footage of me talking to that camera so you can hear the microphones in the MacBook Pro as well as the video quality right now. Okay, we are testing out the camera on the MacBook Pro 16-inch, and it reminds me a lot of the camera that's on my iMac M1 version, which a lot of people compliment me on, so I guess I'll get those same compliments here on this MacBook Pro version. And the mics inside of this laptop as well, because a lot of people love the mics on the previous 16-inch MacBook Pro, so I'm guessing that is carrying over to this. But I gotta say, I like it. And you know what? I get the notch in this regard, because if you're doing web conferencing, it's very hard to concentrate on a small green dot or a small lens. But when you have this little notch there, it does make your eyes gravitate towards this area more. So it's more engaging when you're talking to that person on the other side of the PC or Mac. So there, it's got some benefits besides design. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the camera on the MacBook Pro. Okay, now we got that settled, let's move on to the keyboard. The keyboard is beautiful. It's that Magic Keyboard. We enjoyed the Magic Keyboard. Some people didn't like the butterfly keyboard. It didn't bother me either which way, but some people really love the Magic Keyboard, and it is here. Also, what has changed? That touch bar is now gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone back to the, years past where we have actual physical function keys. Honestly speaking, I did not mind the touch bar. As a matter of fact, some ways it was a benefit to me, but there were people that had a adverse reaction to the touch bar. I don't know. People get emotional about these things, but it's gone. Will Apple ever bring it back? Maybe they will in the future. Maybe it will be more enhanced. Who knows? But we all now have physical function keys, which is great to have. In terms of the keyboard, one thing you're going to notice is there's no more button to sort of dim the lights on the keyboard. It's just lit up, and it's all uniform, it's all beautiful, and it all just seems to be seamless. So as a matter of fact, when I'm looking at the keyboard here in my studio where I've got ample light coming here, I don't really notice the keyboard's lit up, but it actually is. So it's very sensitive to the light around you, and it just adjusts ever so much. So if you're in a dark room, you're going to see it well. It's well lit. If you're in a brighter room, it will just dim down enough, but it's still lit a little bit. But it's not as you can't turn it off like you could before. So I don't know. Maybe that will be something they can change in a firmware update or something, or maybe it'll be a software button. I don't know, but you can't turn it off from what I see currently. Speakers on this machine. Look, if you tried the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro, everybody was raving about the speakers on that, and rightfully so. They were phenomenal for a laptop. It didn't sound like a laptop speaker system. It sounded like something an external speaker system that you would buy from, the Apple Store or something and hook it up to your laptop. It was that good. This is even better. Absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you will be able to hear the audio. I'll try my best to try to give you an idea here. Let me turn this on real quick. I'll play a YouTube video because obviously for copyright situations. Play something from Geek Culture here. Let's go to our videos. Play this one. All right, guys. Something just dropped in the studio that I think you guys are going to enjoy, especially if you want something that is going to be a conversation starter over the top. This is me talking, by the way. Damn cool. We've got the Razer Zephyr mask. This is an RGB air purifier N9. So as you can tell right now, it's loud, it's clear, it's crisp. As a matter of fact, it's very much similar to what I'm using on the iMac right here to hear my audio. Now, I would say the iMac might be slightly louder than this, but this is very clean audio. So there you go. I mean, I would love to play more for you, but of course, for copyright situations, I can't. But I'll try to do something in the full review to give you more of an idea of what this sounds like. Now, in terms of performance on this, I'm going to tell you this. This is just based on my first 24 hours. Photoshop, breeze. And I'm editing GFX 100S images out there. They're about 200 megabytes raw, 600 megabytes in terms of a TIFF file size. So they're very large. There's no hiccup. There's no stuttering. You zoom in on the image. It looks beautiful. It's fantastic. Topaz denoise works great. Sharpening works great. There's no stutter. It is very, very fluid. Even Luminar AI works relatively well. And Luminar AI is pretty taxing on the computer system. And it does a decent job on this MacBook Pro. There's no issues at all with it. So in terms of photo editing, you're going to love this machine. You're going to love it. And if you're using something that's lower megapixels than what I'm using for medium format, it's going to just chug through it with a breeze. As a matter of fact, I've not even heard this fan system kick on once. And I had Photoshop, Lightroom, Luminar AI, and Topaz Denoise opened all at the same time, and also Final Cut in the background. So I'm running some apps, and it's all working beautifully on that. So I had one person message me today and asking me, well, what's it like to use Microsoft Word and PowerPoint? I'm like, it's like a thing of beauty. There's no issues. It's just, that's nothing to this machine. That's snacks. It needs more. So, talking about which one should you get? Okay, let's break it down for you. The M1 chipset, for the most part, like the iMac M1 that I have right here, is a fantastic machine. The only downside I find on this machine is that it only has 16 gigabytes of unified memory. Now, at the beginning when I first got it, that was great. But as I've been getting more into pro applications, I'm finding myself getting low memory warnings pop up on the screen. I have to actually shut down apps in the background to continue working on certain projects, which is not optimal, especially when you're working on video or photos. You don't want to lose what you're editing, right? So that is where I would think the M1 chipset, if you're a pro user and you're going to use a lot of these apps that I've been talking about through this video, I would recommend going to the M1 Pro. Now, the difference between the M1 Pro and the M1 Max isn't that big of a difference on paper. Now, I haven't tried the M1 Pro, but looking at the specs online, if you're a hobbyist, for example, and you're just dabbling with a little bit of photo editing and video editing, 4K, 6K, you could still do 8K with the M1 Pro. Not going to be an issue. Now, the Max chipset is for those that need top-of-the-line performance when your job requires it. When you're editing, you're doing AutoCAD, hardcore AutoCAD, you're doing, 3D rendering, you're doing VR, you're really getting into movie editing and special effects, After Effects and motion, and you're really pushing these apps to their limits, editing 8K a lot or even 6K, or you're doing multiple timelines. I mean, when you're really just going into it, that's where the M1 Max is going to come into play for you. Okay. Now, of course, there will be some other of you like it that have the money and the means to buy this because you want the best of the best. Get this laptop. You are good. I personally think you're good for 3 years or more. But those are my initial thoughts on the M1 MacBook Pro 16-inch. I'm excited to take it through its paces. I'm going to really try to bog this machine down. Just have some fun. I'm not going to go through Geekbench scores and all that stuff because honestly, I don't believe in it. I believe in real world usage and actually testing machine with real applications, not just some simulation tests out there to tell me what it's going to work with and what it's not going to work with. Because I've tried those things before, and sometimes they give you some great numbers, but when it comes down to actual usage, it's not always the case. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the MacBook Pro. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Any questions you have for me, hit me up in the comments. I'll try to answer them for you with that. Follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video. Help us out a lot. Stay safe, and I'll chat to you soon. Take care.